Excellent. All right, so we have started. Again, we'll give another couple minutes to get everybody on board, and then I'll turn it over to you, Scott, and you can kind of introduce yourself to the group and get us kicked off.
Perfect. Sounds great.
All right, Scott, we do have a few more that are registered, obviously, but I'm going to go ahead and, just for time purposes, let you go ahead and start off. Again, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our I Suck at Tulsa chapter webinar. Um, Scott's going to be taking us through the wonderful things of how to deal with all the data that we see. The uh, data beast. No, hang on. What was the term? Give me your term again, Scott.
The data deluge.
Data deluge, absolutely. So he'll be taking us through these processes. Bit of a housekeeping. Remember, if you do need CPE, please make sure that you hang out with us for about 50 minutes. I'll go ahead and upload anybody's CPE credits up into ISACA. If you are not a member of ISACA, I can just send you an email and say, hey, thank you for attending. That will be the way that will be noted. And of course, you'll be able to self-report to any governing body that you need to deal with. One other thing to keep in mind, our next meeting will be on April 16th. That will be our annual general meeting where we'll be talking about new officers for the coming 2-year period. So please join us for that, and that information will be sent out in the next several weeks. With that said, Scott, I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to you, if you don't mind introducing yourself to the group, and go ahead and get started.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan, and to the ISAC Tulsa chapter for having me today. And thank you for everyone for joining. And real quickly, I'm Scott Madenburg. I am the founder and president of a company called ARCHybrid, and I essentially do a lot of this, a lot of training and consulting within the audit risk and compliance space. But just going back in time, started my career at Arthur Andersen, then spent a good 20 plus years doing audit risk and compliance with companies like Fox Entertainment, News Corp, several years at Rovi Corporation, and actually spent almost every quarter of my time there in Tulsa when it was the old Gemstar TV Guide, and then was a chief audit executive. Went to work for a company called AuditBoard, if you guys have ever heard of them, doing sales and then marketing. And here I am today with all of you. Uh, and love to connect with you on LinkedIn. My information is obviously will be in the slides that will be shared, and I'll have that information at the end too. But I wanted to really kind of talk about today, and let me start off by doing this. Do you guys know where your phone is right now? And I'm sure maybe some of you have it on your desk. Maybe some of you are viewing it on your phone. Mine right here. But the reason I ask that question is, have you been in that situation where you don't feel your phone? You don't know where it is. And suddenly you're probably pleading with someone, a stranger, a family member, or something. Can you dial my number? I just need to hear it ring so I can find it. And the reason I say this is you think about it, this little device with so much data is permanently attached to us in a lot of ways. Hopefully not all of you, but for most of us, it has been. And suddenly is if you don't feel it, you don't have it around you, you have that split second spike of adrenaline. And then you have that tiny heart attack of where is it? In that panic, you're feeling it's anxiety. And really what it is, it's this fear of what email, what text, what call, maybe what notification that you might be missing. And probably a lot of times it's when am I missing out from work or your personal life? Um, but I'll also think about how many of you probably started your day. And I'm willing to bet a lot of you probably uh, the first thing you did when you opened your eyes was you grabbed that device. And that was before you kissed your loved ones. Uh, you said hi to your kids, your dog, your cat. And some of you probably at 2 or 3 in the morning when your cortisol levels started to spike and before your morning alarm went off, you grabbed that phone. And what happened was that you checked the news and then you probably checked your Instagram and then you probably checked your LinkedIn. But worst of all, you probably checked your work email and Slack or Teams. But you did all this before your feet even hit the ground. So you invited the entire world and work into your bedroom. And you started your day with this crowded, curated, chaotic mind. But it wasn't just you. It was it was happening to everyone you work with in the company. And think about all your key stakeholders, your control owners, your risk owners, but I want you to, if you think about what I just showed you, what is happening is that your brain is overflowing. And again, that same thing's happening to everyone, that it's all happening before we start our workday. And again, this is what you call the data deluge. And ultimately, it's drowning all of us. And just think about this. How many alerts were sitting on your screen before you had your first cup of coffee or tea in the morning? So that's the unfortunate thing of what's happening here to us. Now, before we dive in, I want to tell you exactly what we're going to be walking away with. So I don't want to just we're going to highlight what this problem is, but I want us to think about how we might be approaching our work or how we might be approaching our stakeholders. So I want to talk about the true cost and where all this came about behind us, because I think it's a great way to understand. If we understand where this problem came from, the size of this problem, it will help us kind of navigate forward. I want to talk about the human element as well, because it's not just about technology, it's the impact on all of us and our colleagues. And then I want to discuss some things that you should be considering and doing when you get back to your desk after this, and hopefully to start testing the floodgates. Because ultimately we want to stop treading this water. I mean, one of the things that I've always said is that I had to come to this realization at a certain point in time was that I thought, hey, we all have to stop this deluge. But in a moment when I kind of start sharing the size of this, realize, well, it's too much for us to stop it. We actually have to learn how we can work around it and control it. So, but the first things first, to understand how we ended up here, I want to take you back on a little trip. So we're going to go back in time here. Because to understand how we got here, we have to go back to the 80s when Crockett and Tubbs were driving the streets of Miami. In the Air Tonight was playing in the background. Because while Miami Vice was a dark cop show, it was about drugs, Ferraris, fancy men in suits. It was partially right about what was happening in Miami because the real story was actually happening behind the scenes. Because the real story was about this guy, Hank Asher. Now, he wasn't a tech CEO. He didn't go to MIT. And in fact, when Crockett and Tubbs were probably cruising down Ocean Drive in Miami, he was down the street painting houses. But here's the twist. Hank had a secret life. He was a drug runner for the cartels. Now, a lot of drug runners are a little messy, but Hank wasn't. Hank was obsessive, and he kept these meticulous records of every plane, every pilot, every kilo, every minute. He had this data mine before kind of big data was a real concept. Now, eventually the law caught up to him, but this is where our story takes a twist. And this, what I'm going to talk about, is why we're in this situation. Now, he didn't go to jail. He actually ended up on the radar of famed attorney F. Lee Bailey. And you might remember F. Lee Bailey from the OJ trials back in the day. But with Bailey's help, he helped Hank to become an informant for the DEA. And one day, while Hank was sitting at a government issued 256K computer with one of those old heavy monitors that's, the black screen with the green text, you may remember, he had this epiphany. The DMV had a list. The credit bureau had a list. The phone company had a list. The police had a list. Everyone seemed to have a list of data. And most of this data was free and readily available. But then he asked a question that has changed our world. What if I merged them? And what he invented was data fusion. He built the first really major databases. And his architecture is actually what allows a lot of our modern systems to track everything that we're doing. In a very real sense, a lot of times if you're on your phone and it knows what you want to view or buy before you do, really is because of a Florida house painter named Hank. So, the reason I wanted to, yes, he was, as someone put, he was a data broker before it was cool. It's true. So the reason I want to share this is because it's a really interesting story to understand how we got here. But thanks to Hank's World, we are here. And I'm sure you guys can do some emojis here, and you're looking at the slide and you go, yeah, this is my world. Or I know that everyone I work with lives in this world. We're surrounded by email, Teams, Slack, text messages, video calls, social media. And hopefully, if we're lucky, we're going to get this occasional face-to-face meeting. But guess what? That meeting is being recorded with AI. So all of this, every ping back, every notification, it's all data. And if you want to put this into perspective, the average professional gets about 120 emails a day. And that doesn't count all the instant messages, the never-ending meeting invites, the urgent texts you're probably getting from stakeholders, your boss, or even your family members. And now with AI in the mix, every bit of data that we send in is producing a whole new pile of data on the way out. So everywhere we're looking now, there's more and more data. And I'm sure that, as you guys said, you've probably yourselves have been on a Zoom call, maybe a Teams call, and then suddenly a text is coming in, and maybe you're getting a Slack message all at the same time. And that's what's happening to all of us. And that is the unfortunate side effect of the data deluge. So what's happening is that we all feel like this person on a regular basis, but so does everyone else, everyone around the world, everywhere we go, because data is everything and it's everywhere. And it sometimes feels like all we're doing is drinking from a data hose. Now, I want to tell you how big this data problem is. So I want to talk about numbers. In 2025, just over 50 days ago, at the end of 2025, the world created and consumed about 181 zettabytes of data. Now, a zettabyte is 1 trillion gigabytes. So think about most of you and your mobile phones. They probably have about 256 gigabytes, and you're constantly feeling like I have so many emails and photos that I'm running out of storage. So just imagine trying to back up 181 zettabytes of data. And in fact, an interesting fact here is if you were to store, if anyone remembers DVDs, what Netflix used to provide before they were streaming, you would have a stack of about 45 trillion DVD disks to store 181 zettabytes of data. But this is the kicker. Over 90% of all the data that has ever existed was created in just under the last 5 years. And we've always had a lot of data, but we've created more of it in the last 5 years. And I've checked multiple sources and validated this multiple times, and it still constantly shocks me. And the reason I want you to understand is it's not a gentle stream. It's really a tidal wave. And we're dealing with almost this data tsunami that's crashing over every organization, every industry, every single one of us, every single day. So, what does this mean for us who are in audit, risk, or infosec or IT is that the sheer scale can be very daunting. It could be exhilarating too. I mean, it could mean more opportunities, but it also means more challenges, more risk, more noise for us to cut through. So I want you to keep this scale in mind as we go through today, because it's if 90% of our data is new, just how mature are our existing controls around all this data? So we got to really think about that. So as we move on here, I want to tell you something. Probably about 33% of the data that we have in our organizations is, in a way, trash. It's garbage. And that's rot data. It's redundant, it's obsolete, trivial. So the redundant data, the best way I can say is that it's a spreadsheet that's saved on maybe three different servers within the company. Or imagine for those who are auditors, you create an audit report and you email that out. And then someone else sends that out to other people over Slack. And then someone else sends that over another medium that you have within your company. And suddenly that copy is redundant. It's saved over three different systems, four different systems, different servers. And now you have it sitting out on AWS, on Azure, maybe on company servers. And then you have obsolete data. And I'm willing to bet a lot of the companies you guys are working for probably still have, although you have a retention policy, there may still be a lot of stuff that's still sitting there. And there's vendor contracts going back to 2012. And most of those vendors are no longer in existence. And they're still sitting there on an active server or saved somewhere. Or there's trivial data. How many of you guys, got probably 10, 15 memes sent to you over personal or work, whether that was email, Slack, text, whatever, of that CFO that got caught at the Coldplay concert? That's trivial data. It's the stuff that we never really needed. Now, why do we hold on to this? Who knows? A lot of it's maybe fear of deleting. It's that what if we ever need it type scenario. But for all of us, we deal with risk. So we know that rot data, it actually expands our attack surface. And what happens is that the bad actors out there, they can actually infiltrate your systems and hide within the rot. But the other problem is that we might have really important data hiding within the rot itself. So that really can impact a lot of us. And I'll give you just a personal example. A while back, I had an old Yahoo email account, and I wanted to free up some storage, and I started going back and just looking at old emails and going, wow, I need to get rid of these. But as I was going through them, I came across some photos that were very personal to me, and I'm like, I don't even have these saved anywhere. that's personal, except in this email. And it was amongst all these old emails that were basically a lot of junk email. So that's what I'm saying is important insights might be hidden within all this rot. So it carries a big invisible tax for us. And so this is why it matters. There's a dollar and cents. So if you ever needed to convince someone about the urgency for data quality and even thinking about how we want to do this is the numbers. Poor data quality, it can cost companies on average about $13 million a year. Now, I'm not talking, and that may not be a lot to a Fortune 500 company, but to a lot of companies out there, that could be a quarter of their bottom line just disappearing to a digital black hole, all because, you know, we wanted to keep an old file or someone couldn't find the right version because we have multiple copies of it. But the other thing is that you now have executives that might be making strategic business decisions on data that includes a lot of rot or bad data, so it can impact it. And so the other thing is that risk goes far beyond the, loss of productivity. But again, if that data leaks, your company's then looking at a $5 million bill to clean up it. And, I'm sure just some thumbs up. How many of you guys feel on almost a monthly basis? I know I'm getting them, but feels like monthly that my own personal data has been compromised. And I'm sure a lot of you are getting that as well. So what's happening is that we know there's a lot more leaks going out there. So, and that's not just thing. We're all moving very rapidly into AI. And a lot of AI initiatives, about 75% of them are still failing because of the data issue. Part of the problem is that we've moved our focus to AI, but a lot of times we've kind of taken our eyes off of the data, which is actually needed for the AI. And then the other problem that we're also seeing is that 1 in 4 professionals are actually, that they've done some analysis, they say that bad data is making their job harder to do. So, it's a really mission critical thing for us. So if we can invest in good data quality and governance, it actually will help our organizations in the long run. So I want to get, what does this also mean to us as uh, professionals and as humans? Because it's not just a technical one. So, if you think about it, I kind of started this at the beginning. We're getting all this data impacting us by the day our feet hit the ground. And, the term for this uh, is called infobesity. And I like to joke that sadly there's no FDA approved weight loss drug for infobesity. Um, and also too, as we know, the insurance companies wouldn't cover it. So we have to realize this because if you think about it, the human brain, it wasn't designed to process 181 zettabytes of data, let alone try to get through 120 emails before lunch. So what happens is that we end up overloaded, um, where it's harder to potentially spot risk. It's harder to connect the dots and maintain our professional skepticism. And it's not just us. Again, it's our control owners, our friends on infosec teams, our business key stakeholders making critical business decisions. And in fact, academic research has shown that when we're drowning in all this information, our data accuracy actually drops. So we do become less effective. And, it's really becomes a paradox of modern life. So we're dealing with this on the home front because we're overloaded. We're doing this on the work front. And really, you start building this in, this is how we start feeling. I'm sure that a lot of you probably feel like these individuals, or someone at work that does. So it is a call to action for us. And so I know a lot of you are saying is, well, hey, what are we supposed to do about this? And what I'm encouraging is that we all need to be data champions. And I'm not saying become a data steward or a data owner, but we need to start supporting and promoting strong data governance and really helping the organization to help with the risk data interpretation. And we need to do this so that we can cut through all this noise, spot the emerging risks, ask the uncomfortable questions. If everyone else is looking at the shiny new dashboard they got, or trying to see how much they can use that new AI tool to increase efficiency, what we need to be asking ultimately is, where did that data originate? Um, how do we know that it hasn't been altered? So these are the things that we want to do. So it leads to conversation. So we need to talk about the next thing is data sustainability. And when I was preparing this presentation, and anyone ever asked you guys, what do you mean by data? Why is data important? I'm going to use an analogy here. When preparing this, I was talking to my sister, and she works for this large engineering company, and they deal with water, and more specifically, a lot of water treatment. And it struck me how it really does correlate to data. So, in how you think about how a city or your county you live in manages its water supply. And the raw data is very similar to like a water flood. It starts, tearing through a town, it's uncontrolled, it's muddy, it's damaging, and you can't consume it, you can't build with it, you can't trust it. So what do we need to do? We need to build infrastructure, and that is data sustainability. So it's really trying to turn that wild flood into something that is a really valuable resource. And the idea is that we want to start eliminating or reducing the amount of that rot so that at the end of the day, we are reducing some of that data overflow on us that's impacting us within work and all of our key stakeholders so that we can actually start thinking better and make better decisions. And also, too, the more we can reduce of that rot, uh, the better that we can enhance our control environment, reduce risk, and hopefully reduce the chance of a lot of bad actors getting inside our organizations and hiding in within that rot. And one of the ways that we want to do this, and I know some of this may be kind of repetitive, but I want to just again keep this in mind, is that um, you think about, we built this huge data reservoir, right? And to keep it from collapsing or flooding is that when, where there's data governance coming in, is the governance itself is the dam. And to keep everything safe, et cetera, you need to answer three questions within your data governance. Who controls that floodgate? Again, that's your data owners, your stewards, your custodians. So they're responsible for making sure that the right people have access to the right data at the right time. And then how is data purified? It's all about data quality management, setting clear standards, having the cleansing processes that we want, making sure that what flows through the system is actually trustworthy and useful. And then third is, where is that data directed? And that's handled through distribution channels, usage policies, and access control. So ensuring that the data gets to where it's needed and only where it's needed. So the thing is that we want to make sure that we're not just looking at a corporate policy and seeing that there's a data owner and just check the box. And I've seen this in the past. I've seen in future lives in a company where a data owner who was a mid-level manager quit, only to find out that IT was kind of rubber stamping everything just to keep the lights on. So when you log off of this webinar today, what I want you to do is I want you to quickly check that your team or your audit team, if you're not part of the audit, does an accountability audit. in that they're actually auditing the true results of the controls. That are your data owners truly reviewing the access, or are they just maybe they're overwhelmed and they're just hitting approve all because they have so many things coming at their way. So we need to do this. And one of the things I want to get into now is that even if we have this world-class dam, that data is so murky. And this is where, again, we have all this redundant, obsolete, trivial rot data. And our best friend that's going to help us with this kind of going forward will be artificial intelligence. It's going to become that filtration plant. And so the thing is that if we continue to do things like pull a 25 manual sample of a population of thousands or even millions of transactions and hope that we're going to find the errors, especially if you saw the amount of data is growing, uh, we're just going to have a harder time. So we do have analytics, and I encourage a lot of us to still continue to use analytics. But again, it has its own challenges as well. But AI is a great tool, and it doesn't just clean up typos, but it can kind of scale the entire cleansing process. So one of the things I would encourage, if your company hasn't done this, is start to deploy some AI to help proactively work on classifying data, enforcing data retention schedules, and even help to instantly isolate what's PII and PHI type data. So I want you to think of AI sort of like a drone that's flying over the reservoir and it's looking for, and Jonathan, you'll appreciate this, oil slicks that may be in the water, working for Phillips. But those oil slicks are rot. So if we can let AI start sorting through this and trying to find this kind of digital trash, then we have the human in the loop that can review it and permanently delete it. So again, it's sort of like going through using AI to sort through all your emails. And instead of it just deleting it for you, you take a quick glance and say, well, wait, I agree, but these three I don't want to delete. And you can delete the rest. That's exactly what we want to do here. So the next thing is that a tiny leak can become catastrophic. And I've always said to myself, I'm always worried about the little unknown than the larger risk sometimes, because that little unknown can blow up to something very big. So, if you think about these four metrics here, you have timeliness, volume, quality, and anomaly detection. And I'm curious for your own organizations, which can go ahead in the chat if you want, is how, which of these four does your company struggle with right now? But think about the last time your organization maybe had a massive ERP data migration, and that happened over a holiday weekend. Without observability, you might come back on Tuesday and you find that the reports are failing because half the data was dropped off. But with observability and using more of the AI technology, as long as it's trained right and we're using it right, we have governance around it and human in the loop, it can start managing and monitoring the volume metric in real time. And if something happens, it can be a automatic shutoff valve and say, hey, alarms go off. We're stopping this migration because something might be wrong. And that's where we can come in and start taking a look at things and says, what was data quality? What was the issue at hand that started to cause this, so that we can make a fix and get the data quality transferred over. And I do see, some folks putting in things like quality and so forth. And that's one of the things I'm trying to get at is and what I'm seeing a lot is we've moved so much focus to the AI, which is good. It's going to help us, so forth. But one of the things that we haven't done is we haven't fixed our data problem. And we always heard the term garbage in, garbage out. And that's something that we're kind of seeing a little bit as well. But I want to kind of break down three things that we really need to do that will help us as audit and risk professionals. Again, predictive analytics. Think of it as your weather forecast for risks. From my perspective, analytics and using analytic tools today is still very relevant and important. Now, I know I've asked a lot of people about this. Are you not using analytics as much or using more AI? Uh, I would say a lot of people are trying to transition more to using AIs for the analytics, but I think using a good old analytics tool, or even if you're using Power BI or Excel, is a great thing. Because until we have full faith in AI, I think running an analytics alongside it is just more prudent. One of the things you can then do too is, are there discrepancies between what you see on your analytics and what the AI is saying? And if you do identify some discrepancies, that just might point out that you do have a data problem. Second is, again, knowledge graphs. Again, a holistic map of your organizational data, connecting the silos between, say, what's happening in HR, finance, operations. And these knowledge graphs are very helpful for finding segregation of duty issues and conflicts. Um, does John Doe in HR the same person as J Doe that's, got a vendor created in finance? Again, automated monitoring. Uh, again, as we start to see this with I think this is very helpful because it can work very if you have the right agents and have everything set up. And I'm going to talk about this and show you a great example in a moment, but it can start doing this in real time. And again, I will stress this as long as we have a human in the loop. But having all these three things together really will build a sense of enhanced data management. So I want you to take a look at this, more of this image on the right side. Um, I'm not going to have you read about a Python code today, but this is really interesting. It's something that I came across a few months back by a developer named Matt Dancho, and I've included a QR code if you want to go. And I can't show this within today. It's about a 17-minute long video, and to really get the gist of what's happening, you really want to watch it from beginning to end. And I highly recommend that you do. Because in this video, what Matt has demonstrated is how he's used GitHub repository along with a lot of kind of LLMs and copilots that essentially he transforms a lot of messy data sets, a lot of the rot into really good, clean, analysis ready formats. So what he's done is he employs these large language models to diagnose data issues, such as maybe incorrect data types, or it can also provide things like transparent logging systems that for the resulting scripts. And then these kind of agentic workflows, what they do is they allow you to build these automated pipelines that function as this persistent tool rather than these one-off AI queries that might be happening today. But these are the benefits you're going to get. And again, this is why I want you guys to check out this video is really as some inspiration or something just to think about, is my company doing this? Or if they're not, we should be thinking about this. But it gives you the ability to have complete auditability and transparency. So the AI logs its recommended steps and then generates standards, and it has all in a readable code, which it can be saved locally. And so that allows us to audit and others to independently inspect and verify the exact logic that was applied to the data. And then it also allows for data privacy and flexible architecture, because the way that this tool was built was that it can integrate with various large language models. Now, maybe your organization only has one approved large language model. Maybe it has multiple. But by having this ability to work with multiple, you have flexibility to really have compliance within your kind of organization, and you can work around your different privacy and security policies. Um, it has the ability to um, for users to kind of pass explicit instructions to the agents that align to maybe specific businesses or compliance rules, and maybe you're doing business maybe in Europe, and you have to have certain things that are almost like a plug-in for those regulations. So you can instruct it on, hey, we need to make sure that we don't remove these outliers. And then the other great thing about this tool is that it was built to be reusable so that you can actually start using it on a regular basis. And the way I like you to think about this is imagine hiring someone to come do steam cleaning of your carpet. Okay, you're getting your carpet back to being very clean, but what you then do is implement a no shoe policy in the house, and you go and purchase one of those Roombas so that it's constantly vacuuming and keeping your carpets clean. And that's what these type of systems will do. So again, definitely check it out. 17 minutes long. It's a great way to get inspired and to think about what's possible to start getting rid of a lot of this raw data. And then I want to just kind of go back to our cognitive challenge again, because I'm going to talk about some things that we can start doing. But again, the stakes are high. If we're all being challenged with all this pressure and all this data because of bad data that's going in and the use of AI, everything's bombarding on us. It can impact us from having that sharp, skeptical mindset. In a lot of ways, what can happen to folks is that they might start looking at surface level type results. They're not digging into the detail. They might just kind of going, well, we'll follow the easiest path possible. And the way I like to say is they may skim, scroll, and move on. And because of this cognitive challenge and a lot of this data, what starts happening to us and to maybe to some of our key colleagues is that they start becoming less effective at monitoring the controls, or maybe they don't see the emerging risk that's coming towards them or towards the organization, or again, perhaps a key business stakeholder is making a business decision that is not the right decision because of bad data. So, some practical strategies. We want to protect our professional skepticism. So, one thing that we want to start doing is risk-based alert tuning. So, sit down with your SOC or IT or InfoSec teams and start thinking about how can we calibrate the threshold of and reduce false positives. Because think about it, if you have a SOC analyst and they're getting 5,000 alerts a day, they're maybe just so bombarded with that, but other tasks that are on their plate, they might be ignoring 4,900 of them. So we want to reduce the noise so that they can work appropriately. Continuous control monitoring. Again, we can't just manually do things the way we did. If by 2030 we're going to have, you know, 1,000 zettabytes of data created and consumed, and I think that number by in 2 years is going to be somewhere around 600 zettabytes. It's just too much for us to do manually. So that's where we want to start bringing in more AI models to help with the continuous control monitoring and start alerting us in real time. And then the third is really, again, data lineage mapping. So if we can understand, again, where our data is originating, um, again, I'm sure a lot of us have been there where we spend 40 hours tracing a single transaction through 4 different legacy systems. And if we don't have proper lineage mapping and really understanding where all of our data is coming from or flowing, that's going to be very helpful, very impactful on all of us. So if we can apply these strategies, we can hopefully change our value propositions. And then as we, step up as data champions and advocating for data quality, spotting emerging risk, and using data to generate kind of these meaningful insights, we can impact our own quality. And so we can use data as a stepping stone to be, as long as it's clean and we're using it right, to be more forward-thinking counsel that executive leadership really wants and they're desperate for right now. So, obviously business leaders are moving fast. And we've seen this in a lot of cases and with even AI that they're implementing AI, but they don't have a strategy or they implement it before they even think about governance. Um, so, and we've seen the negative repercussions of a lot of that happening at companies. I'm sure you're seeing this and reading this in the news. So what happens is that a lot of executives, even your audit committees, your board members, they are terrified in a lot of ways. They may not show it, but they're terrified of making a strategic decision that is bad because it's going to impact the shareholders. It's going to impact, the reputation of the organization. So when you can look them in the eye and say, hey, our dam is secure, our dam is clean, the anomalies are handled, you're going to become more indispensable. So that's going to help us maintain our seat at the table. And so here's my suggestion for the journey ahead. One, again, audit the unstructured data. Don't just look at, say, an SQL database. Initiate some digital data, digital debris review. I start thinking about the rock. Do we have rock? Where is that rock? What type of rock do we have? Where could it be maintained? Start testing the floodgates. Again, do an accountability audit of your data owners. Um, does someone seem a bit overwhelmed, and that could lead to them having, actually impacting the review process? Implement again the continuous control monitoring. My urgency there is start small, pick one mag control, make sure you test it, especially if we're going to be using AI around this. And then you can start implementing it further and further. And then again, evaluate the alert thresholds. Start looking at things of false positive fatigue. And it kind of relates to the floodgates as that I mentioned just a second ago. And if we can start doing a lot of these things, we can start getting a grasp on it. Because ultimately, again, we got to think about the data isn't going to fix itself. The other thing I would also suggest, and some things that when I talk about this more in the human element, because today it's not necessarily about that, but there are other things that we want to start thinking about when it comes to data. One, how can we also manage it better? There are a lot of great tools now. If your company is using Microsoft, if your company is using Google with, say, Gemini, or there's other tools out there. There's one that's really neat called Littlebird. And a lot of these tools that are out there today, what's really neat about them is that they're SOC 2, they have a SOC 2, they're GDPR compliant, they are AWS are running on encryption, and a lot of times they don't use the data for training models. They don't, you know, do things that would have us concerned. But what these tools do is that they can run on your system and help you in a way that's almost like a second mind. And that's something I want to just also mention is with AI, we need to treat it properly, but we can actually start using it as a second brain in a lot of ways and try to take some of the burden off of us. So if we can use AI better, and a great example I give is if you have a team meeting, uh, everyone on that team meeting probably already today is jotting down notes, trying to make up things, and we have repetitive information being now stored is maybe someone's writing down in their journal. Maybe someone's putting it on during the meeting and writing down notes of what we need to be doing for the day. What are the key milestones, etc. If we were to just say, hey, we're going to record this with AI, it's going to create a transcript, and I just want everyone to listen and follow, that's less for us to do. And let that consolidate the information for us. That's like a second brain. And it can reduce some of that cognitive strain on all of us. Other things that are really things that you might want to consider too is that I always suggest to people is there's a thing called the Parkinson's trend, and not Parkinson's of what is the unfortunate disease, but what this can do is that you start monitoring your time. And what I mean by this, it's a really interesting thing that if you start doing is if think about it, how many times have you been given, hey, you need 2 weeks to finish this project. And guess what? You're going to finish that project in 2 weeks. But if your boss called and said, hey, I need this done by tomorrow, you're miraculously going to finish it by tomorrow. It's not that what you're working on changed, it was that the time changed. So some of us, and a lot of times, is if we start thinking about shorter bursts of time, we might be able to get things done and we actually become more efficient. So those are just some things. But I want to leave you with one bit of thing as we close out today. Happy to take some questions on afterwards. But Hank Asher, he was the unlikely pioneer whose obsession with connecting the dots created a lot of this data deluge we now face. And no blame to Hank. I don't think he knew what he was creating. And there's been a lot of good that's come of this. But it didn't mean to set out chaos. He set out to build a system to make sense of all of it. And that is exactly what we're tasked with doing. The 181 zettabytes are here. The deluge is not going away, but the real value, again, isn't the flood itself. We're not going to be able to stop the flood, but we need to learn to manage, govern, and control it. And because ultimately, until Novo Nordisk comes out with data Zempic, there is no magic injection to manage all the data fat that we're dealing with. So that's why we need to be there to help our organizations get on this healthy data diet. And again, set ourselves up to be data champions. And I would say is as we're moving more and more to AI, we also need to not stop the conversation around data. Data is so important. And we want to make sure that our AI models are working right, that our people are thinking right. So we need to get rid of the rot and we need to have good insights, continually monitor the rot. And again, that 17-minute video, go check it out. I highly encourage it today. Again, I'm Scott Madenburg. There's my QR code there if you want to connect. I'd love to chat with you guys, but happy to, talk about any type of questions you guys might have today. So I'm going to stop share, just kind of open up. And if you guys have any questions, happy to answer. If not, if you want to ping me later, that's fine too. But thank you for having me.
Excellent presentation, Scott. Please go ahead in the chat. If y'all want to unmute, feel free to do so. If you're going to be shy, I have some questions for Scott. So we won't leave him completely alone. But I'll give everyone a couple seconds before I dive into mine. So anybody, save
Real,
Scott from my deluge of questions.
yes. Don't be
All
shy.
right.
All right, go ahead,
I'm
Jonathan.
not hearing anybody. All right. So the first thing I'm wondering about are large companies like mine. Okay.
Mhm.
So I'm going to be kind of selfish. Large companies like mine, we've been around for 50, 100 years, right? Long, long time. We have all kinds of data, whether it's structured, unstructured, what have you. And even now as we're moving things to cloud and other platforms and other things, it almost feels insurmountable to be like, okay, well, I know we haven't paid attention to data quality and data cleansing for 100 years, but now we're going to focus on it. We're going to do it, right? It can feel just completely insurmountable. Where do you start if you do have those petabytes, the zettabytes of data that you just, I don't even know where to begin. So what do you think, Scott? What if I had 5 minutes with my data, my chief data officer? How am I going to sell them on a data quality program?
Well, one of the things that I would actually, and I think that's an excellent question, is where do you start? Uh, One of the things too is, and I mentioned is because, especially with AI today, as much as we're using it, so are the bad actors, and you're
Absolutely.
using it a lot. So one of the things I would actually start thinking about is what is getting attacked? What type of, maybe a certain system is getting attacked more often, maybe a certain business unit is getting attacked more often. Um, is there something that they're frequently seeing more than others? And you can maybe scale that around. And that might tell you, hey, there may be something in there that's not adding up. So that again, I think that would be a great way to start thinking about maybe there's one single area that we want to start in. Or potentially two is you're starting to think about, hey, there's one line of business that we're not doing um, or we're doing more work here, and it's very instrumental. It's very critical. We need to make some good business decisions. It was one to Another thing that I would actually say about the data is from an AI perspective, where are we starting to see more use of AI? And where do we want to start doing that? And that might be an area of let's just hypothetically, let's say that your HR department is going, hey, we're going to look into implementing AI around hiring process. That may be a great area to start going, hey, let's look at the data because again we've seen this in the past where the data maybe it picks up because in the past that there were mainly males with certain degrees et cetera got hired and then it starts skewing and hallucinating um, and I'm a father of a 17-year-old girl, so that's where I think about. I want her to get hired too, but
Absolutely.
maybe that's something that we need to think about. Is the data in there? Maybe it has some bad data or data that we need to look through and clean up.
Yeah, that's a great point, Scott. And you're exactly right, especially with the utilization of AI. It changes the game as far as what our data is telling us. So if we have bad data, it can completely compromise everything we're wanting to do with automation and continuous monitoring and all of that. So that's great. All right. With that said, we are at 11. Thank you so much, Scott. It was a great presentation. For everybody that's on the call, I'll grab your email addresses and I'll send you the presentation. Apparently, speaking of data, apparently I have been locked out of putting files into Zoom now, so I will communicate that through a side channel. So be prepared for that. Again, Scott, thanks so much. It was a great presentation, and we'll chat later on. All right.
Great. Appreciate everyone. Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it.